Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Hi, it's Patrick O'Driscoll here. You might know me as Pods. I'd like to welcome you to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. It's the podcast we produce for the love of farming right throughout the Adelaide Hills region. And now, I'll hand over to Adelaide Hills Farm Services' very own Belle Baker. Over to you, Belle.
Hi there, welcome to this month's Adelaide Hills Farmcast, the podcast that gives you a list of things, an almanac if you will, of things to consider doing on your small acreage or lifestyle property in the coming months. I've got Pods with me in the office again today. G'day Pods.
G'day Belle. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're through it, aren't you? See, you tell everyone this is my podcast, but...
It certainly is your podcast. You're the beauty and the brains behind it.
No, you're always here by my side, darling. It's just perfect. Rightio, in this episode of the Adelaide Hills Farmcast, Pods talks to Shane Collins, CEO of the Oakbank Racing Club, about what it takes to get the track ready for summer racing. And I talked to the lovely Megan Miller. Megan has several breeds of goats, including dairy goats and miniature goats. One of the things I love about goats is that they have a tendency to eat unusual things, including Salvation Jane, which is moderately toxic to them. We'll cover that, plus your summer preparations in the Almanac. So let's stop kidding around and get started. When we're talking about our livestock in the summer months, we're really talking about water security. There's a huge deluge coming down the Murray, and that's not going to have a huge impact on your dams unless you're on the floodplains. Your stock do need constant access to clean drinking water in order to survive and thrive on hot days. Pods, the increase in water or the amount of rain we've had, does it affect the salinity of the dams?
No, it should not.
No. So if anything, it would clear them out. But it affects the water table, doesn't it? The salt level will rise in the water table.
It shouldn't have a large impact on the salinity of our aquifers underground, and it's obviously very beneficial for our dams and water catchment areas.
Yeah. If you're planning to go away over the summer, please ensure you've got someone available to check your stock water and monitor for any unusual activity. We hear far too many stories, including a friend of ours recently, who've had their animals stolen and house and sheds ransacked. It's an awful situation to be in, but if you can reduce the chances of it happening to you, perhaps by having someone to take on caretaker duties, you could work in with your neighbour or have someone to stay for the time you're away. The other thing that you really need to consider, as I said, is about your water. Early detection of a problem with your irrigation can prevent harm to your animals. And even if the person keeping an eye on the property can't fix irrigation problems, they can probably call someone who can. Now, there are a number of remote water level sensors on the market, and if this is the direction you want to go down, and we do recommend you consider it, please do your research. Some of these products are better than others. We've been really impressed by a product called the Water Rat, sold by Farmco. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's by far the easiest water sensor to set up. You literally just pop it in the trough. It recently won gold in the product design category of the Australian Good Design Awards earlier this year. And other than the absolute simplicity of the design, the other magnificent feature is that you can simply pick it up when you move stock out of one paddock and take it with you and drop it in the trough in the next paddock. It's a subscription product. However, you do get a 30-day trial. And what better time of year to give it a go? I think the Water Rat has a lot of potential, and if you give it a go, please let me know. I don't know what the official record will say, but I don't think we've had a spring at all. What do you reckon, Pods?
Agree totally with that, Belle.
Yeah, it's still wet underfoot, most places in the hills, and you can see runoff seeping out of the hills and flowing down roadsides all over the place. The Bureau of Meteorology is telling us that it'll be a wet summer, and PIRSA and the Department of Health have highlighted the increased risk of contracting Japanese encephalitis. The main high-risk areas will be around the floodplains as the stormwater runs through the Murray River and out to the mouth. However, increased levels of pooled water on properties, together with hot summer weather, will mean there's a real risk to all property owners. Encephalitis is rare, and in most cases, if you contract it, the symptoms will be mild. Sadly, that wasn't the case for my dad, who contracted encephalitis 7 years ago. He's still with us. However, he can no longer farm, drive a vehicle. His fine motor skills are greatly impaired, and he has short memory loss. I always say that outwardly it looks like dementia, but it's so much more. Unfortunately, due to the scarcity of the vaccine, vaccinations are only available to people who live in identified high-risk areas. However, if you reduce the opportunities for mosquitoes, you're halfway there. The other really important thing to do, particularly in rural areas, is to remove any water-holding containers where mosquitoes may breed. So old feed troughs, watering cans, clogged gutters, unused garden pots, etc. They just have to go. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It truly ruins lives. So please do what you can to reduce the risk of contracting the encephalitis virus. SA Health has some really good information on their website, so I'll put a link in the show notes. Now, hopefully many of you have taken up the opportunity to upgrade your farm fire units following the incentive scheme run by the CFS. Farm fire fighting units are an important early response to fire events, and the CFS is really pushing to get as many of them on the ground as possible. The other thing we've done is install a sprinkler system on our roof, powered by a petrol-driven firefighter pump. We also have a rain aid valve on our tanks, which means if the water level gets too low, it automatically switches to mains water. This is really important if you consider the likelihood of needing significant water in case of fire, only to find that there's very little left. And we check and do a service on our system regularly. Pods taught me how to run the firefighting system last year, and I recorded my lesson and published it on the socials. I'll put a link to it on the show notes, as it's a handy guide for those of us who are not super familiar with irrigation pumps. Now, I have reached out to the CFS because I really wanted to get them on board for this month's podcast and talk to them about the things that people need to consider when pulling together their farm fire units. But as you can imagine, they're incredibly busy at the moment, not just with the recent storms, but of course also with the water that's about to come down the Murray. So I'm hoping to bring you that in the next couple of months. It will still be relevant. It's just going to be later than I'd hoped. Salvation Jane, that old chestnut. We recently went out to a property that was completely covered in 3-foot-high Salvation Jane. It was appalling and just so sad to see. There is absolutely no quick fix for Salvation Jane. I repeat, no quick fix. It can be sprayed over a number of years, but it has to be at the right time. I took a few photos of the area that we were looking at, including a monster of a plant that had a stem about, what do you reckon, Pods, 15 centimetres wide?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, so I made Pods go and stand next to it so we could get some perspective. I took some photos, they're in the show notes. Have a look, it's really quite remarkable. But look, the thing with Salvation Jane, you can manage it. You will not eradicate it in 1 year of treatment, but Pods, the plants need to be in their growth stage. So for us here in the hills, when is that?
During the growing season, obviously. I was recently out on property spraying some Salvation Jane late last week. It was well and truly in flower, negligible as to whether we are going to get a full weed kill there. There certainly would have been some seed that had set, so we will get a pretty good plant kill, but the aim is to kill the weed, the plant, I should say, before it is able to set seed.
So when really, for the season, Pods, I mean, we're in November, end of November now, so when really September, October?
I would have said September, October.
Except that this year being particularly wet, it was too wet to get on it. So,
Yeah.
And even this week you got bogged. Am I allowed to say that out loud?
You are, because it's a very common practice at the minute, both here in the hills and out there in Broadacre, Australia.
Yeah. So the weather has really prevented a lot of action being taken on Salvation Jane until late. It's still worthwhile spraying it when you did, because you will
reduce the plant numbers and I will reduce the seed set.
Yeah.
For this year, however, there will still be seed in the ground that will allow it to germinate next year again.
So look, for that property that you sprayed, it's going to be, 3 years worth at least?
Certainly got to look at it as a long-term management plan and 3 years minimum, absolutely.
Okay. So the seeds can lay dormant in the soil for around 20 years. And like I said, there's just no quick fix. The best thing to do is to keep on top of it and to treat the small outbreaks when they occur. We covered Salvation Jane in a blog post several years ago, and the information is still relevant today. If you've got a bit of Salvation Jane on your property, go and have a look at the blog post. I'll put a link in the show notes, and I'll also link to an updated fact sheet from PIRSA. So hopefully that will give you a few ideas of what you could be thinking about and planning to do on your property in the coming months. I'll be back next month with more timely jobs to add to your to-do list. Don't forget, the show notes for this episode can be found on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au.
200 to go as they turn into the final straight. Winter clover in the lead ahead of wet winter and spring rains. Adelaide Hills Farm Services boom sprayer has a good position, followed by moderate breeze and sunny afternoon. Summer kikuyu trailing the field but starting to make up ground. Oakbank punters look pretty settled, as do local businesses and twilight race meetings. 100 to go now, and summer kikuyu making great gains as winter clover slips back into the field. Sunny afternoon remaining strong, and Pods is leaning in on Adelaide Hills Farm Services boom sprayer and now neck and neck with moderate breeze. Summer kikuyu going strong now, 50 to go, and it's summer kikuyu neck and neck with Adelaide Hills Farm Services boom sprayer. Too close to call. Looks like Adelaide Hills Farm Services boom sprayer has made way for summer kikuyu to take the race, followed by Oakbank punters and twilight race meeting tied for third.
Here's Pods talking with CEO of the Oakbank Racing Club, Shane Collins, about what it takes to prepare the track for summer race meetings.
We've started spraying the racecourse proper in preparation for your Christmas twilight meeting on December the 21st. Now, I know that's some way away, but I know what I'm doing from an agronomic point of view, but not so over the track manager's role. If you can just give me a background on what you're looking for from a track management point of view in prep for that meeting and beyond.
Yeah, sure. Really important time of the year for all racetracks around South Australia. Most tracks, with the climate we've got here in South Australia, you can't get through the whole racing year with the same grass. So you have to have a winter grass, which then folds into a summer grass. And we've got to oversow, and you've got to make sure that there's a transition period for those grasses. Unfortunately, with the wet winter, as you just mentioned, Pods, it's meant that the winter grass has held on a lot longer, and the summer grass hasn't had an opportunity to pop its head out. So what we've done today is we've worked with you guys in engaging some chemicals that will enhance that. So we really want to give the winter grass a bit of a headache. We want to give a lot of the winter weed that comes through with that, and the Oakbank grass does carry a lot of clover and those sort of material in it, and we want to give it a bit of a headache and stress it out so our lovely kike can wake up with this beautiful sunshine we've got out, and we'll get the kike poking its head out, and we'll grow over the next couple of weeks, leading to us having a great track for our summer racing.
Okay, excellent. When I first drove onto the course this morning, I got out and had to do a few weather checks, and I just felt that the grass was very long, but that's probably atypical of racetracks in contrast to a sporting field where you're used to a shorter length grass on a cricket oval, for instance, at this time of year. The racetrack here, the cricket ball would not run at all well.
No.
The cricket ball never ran at all well when I was batting either.
I'll tell you how to fix that, mate. Hit it in the air.
Correct.
Hit it over the grass.
Hit it over the grass and over the top. Well done. If only I could hit it. What about the length of the grass and why is it longer? And right now it did feel pretty soft. Being a betting man, I guess it's somewhere in the range of a soft to heavy track at the minute, which is no surprise given our weather conditions.
Yeah, so it's a good point you make, and it's very important. With the horses and the horses' welfare, we always make sure the grass is of a certain length. The horses are still been working on here, still training week in and week out. And it's important that we have a really good coverage of grass. So you've got to make sure that you've got a length in the grass that gives that bit of extra cushion. We can't have it like your, let's call it Adelaide Oval or your cricket ovals, as you mentioned, because as soon as it dries out, it becomes too hard. So having a good coverage of grass is really important for the feet of the horses. So it's always a match that you've got to, be careful with your balance, because you don't want it too long either, because that can bring other problems. So especially when you've got weed and stuff like that going through it. So maintaining the grass at the correct height is really important. This was only mowed last Thursday, so it's only had a mow in recent times. With what we've done, your work you've done here today, we would expect that the kike and the warmer weather, the sun from the sky, we would expect that it won't be too long. We'll need to be putting water on it, and we'll give that kike a real injection to pop it out of the ground. And we won't be too far away putting a feed on it, like anything. It needs a good bit of sun, good feed, bit of water, bit of air, and we'll see our summer grass really pop through in the next few weeks.
The chemical that we've used today, and this is upon a recommendation from a turf specialist, Shane, is a product called Cutlass. Cutlass has two active constituents, they being MCPA and dicamba. So absolutely ideal for the job that we're trying to achieve today, but not only with the Cutlass that we've used, I'm using quite a bit of wetter, 150 mils per 100 litres. The wetter is to act as a penetrant into the plant. It's also assisting with our drift, coupled together, and this is something that's new for me, using 05 nozzles, which are a very large nozzle, but they compensate for the very, very high water volume that's been recommended in litres per hectare. The other thing that we've got to understand here is that with these type of products, being the Adelaide Hills, we do have a lot of vineyards throughout the Adelaide Hills. We don't want to have any damage to any of the vines. They're in the budding and growing phase of their life cycle at the minute, being November. So we don't want any off-target damage, and that's something I spoke to you about when you first contacted me, Shane.
Yeah, very important. We got a lot of businesses around us that do vineyards and that sort of work, and our good friends at Living Turf, Luke Clahesi, worked with him, and he provided all those options to us, done a bit of research, and we all sort of landed where we did, and through your experience and knowledge, you were satisfied and ticked that off, which is great, and here we are. So really important we get those sort of materials into the onto the leaf, and then, as we said before, start giving this grass a bit of a headache so the winter grass can go to sleep and enjoy a nice little break.
Another improvement that the Racing Club has undertaken through funding from Racing SA was the outer rail fence from basically the 100 metre mark, maybe the 150 metre mark, all the way around the home turn. Yeah. And if you can just explain a little about that, Shane.
Yeah, again, we were very lucky that we called on our great partners and you guys at Adelaide Hills Farm Services, and we worked together in putting together, all the time, and we spoke a minute ago about welfare. We're always looking to be better and making sure we're safer. As you know, with the Oakbank Racecourse over our shoulders here, the horses run down the hill, turn the home turn before coming towards us where we're standing now. When they come down that turn, it's quite often that a horse may get on its wrong leg and start going to the outside rail. The rail on the outside had not been improved or not been changed for many decades. So it was brought to our attention through the jockeys and through Racing SA that we needed to do some work in actually changing that. So we've implemented the new fence, which you guys put up for us, and we greatly appreciate the work that was done there. But it's really important that we understand these issues within the racing industry, and we're always looking to improve things. And we've got a back fence over at the 1400 metre mark. We had to extend the height of that fence as well. Same sort of reason. So all important features of the industry, and working with you guys in making us better.
Well, you're making me sound very, very needed, very, very wanted. But it's our pleasure, and I've been a racing man. It's a pleasure to help out the Oakbank Racing Club. Thank you very much for having us on course again today. Thank you very much for your ongoing support of our business, Shane. And I really wish you all the very best with your Twilight meeting on the 21st of December. I'm not sure what day that is, but for all those listeners and viewers out there, if you're wanting a good afternoon/evening out with friends, family, work colleagues, Oakbank Racing Club's the place to head.
Yeah, it's got a lot of support, and we've nearly sold out of marquees already, so the front straight will be full of marquees, and we're looking forward to a big crowd. And then we move into January. We've got a couple of race meetings in January before we head into our big Easter carnival. So the work that you've done here today really starts stimulating us towards that, and we're looking forward to it. And track's in tip-top condition, and I think we're only a week or two away from holding trials and that here, so there'll be racehorses belting around here before we know it.
Good one. All the very best, Shane, and thank you again, mate.
Thanks, Pods.
Well done.
Next is my interview with Megan Miller. Megan has several breeds of goats, including dairy goats and miniature goats. They are all adorable, incredibly friendly and affectionate, and they really do make good pets. Megan talks to us about what you need to keep in mind if you're keen to have goats on your property, and she covers off on some of the common myths. Finally, I'd really just like to put it out to our audience out there. We're looking at adding a drone to our spraying program, something that can really provide access to steep terrain and perhaps areas that a ute or side-by-side can't go. I'd really be interested in hearing from anyone who has been giving that some thought, whether they think they've got a property that could benefit from that. And we might sort of continue to look down that in that direction. We're always looking to innovate, but we need to make sure that people out there in the Adelaide Hills are actually going to want that service.
Hi there. Welcome to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. Today I've got Megan Miller from Brer Rose Mini Goats here with me, or from Brer Rose Farm. What do you generally call your business, Megan?
Brer Rose Farm. So used to be Brer Rose Miniature Goats, but as you saw today, we've expanded.
Yes, you have indeed. And we are in the beautiful Hindmarsh Valley, which is 15 minutes from Victor Harbour, and at the foot of this glorious hill or mountain. What have we got behind us, Megan?
Beautiful hill, Mount Billy.
Mount Billy, as in?
Mount Billy, as in the goat.
Isn't that hysterical? So I think that's absolutely perfect. We are in absolute billy goat country. It is an absolutely stunning little pocket of South Australia here, and not far from Victor, one of my favourite places. So Megan, you don't just have miniature goats here. I think we've established that. You've also got dairy goats.
Yes.
And what else have you got here?
We've got 7 different breeds of goat on the property now.
7, wow.
7, and we breed a small breed of pig as well.
Oh, do you? I didn't get to look at the pigs.
We didn't.
If we've got time, I might pop and have a look at the pigs.
So they've become quite an important part of working in our farm plan. We've got calves that we raise on the goat's milk. We've got chickens, so Brahma chickens, which are really big birds.
Yes, they are.
Huge. And we've also got guinea pigs. So, but
there
they're
are a number of, I can see a number of guinea pigs behind us. And so they do have an interesting hair or coat.
They do.
What is that? Tell me about that.
So there's a few different ones we have here. They're Texel, Merino, and alpaca guinea pigs that actually have a long hair.
They are rather beautiful. We have got a photo and we will include that in the show notes. And you breed them to sell. People want to buy them as pets?
We do, yeah, for companion animals.
Wow. And now you did mention something earlier on. Now, how many times a year can a guinea pig produce offspring?
Oh, they're amazing. So they can actually breed up to 5 times a year.
Wow. And how many in each litter?
Anywhere between sort of 2 up to 8, but about 2 to 4 is normal.
Rightio. So would I then assume that you keep the male guinea pigs well away from the females when you don't want them to be mating?
Absolutely, because the females can come back on heat and get pregnant again 15 hours after giving birth. So we keep them very separate until we're ready to breed.
I'm not even going near that, but my mind boggles. All right. Now, I've had a look at your website and you have a plethora of information on there. And that really, I really like that because I see people who breed animals to sell to the general public as having a part of a responsibility to educate and to keep in contact with those people. You provide a lot of information. Tell me about what makes you want to do that.
When I started, about 15 years ago, I didn't even know that miniature goats existed. And then all of a sudden I stumbled upon them. But trying to find information was like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Right.
So as my journey has progressed, I have continually added to the information on my website because I think it is absolutely critical.
Yes.
And to share my experiences so people don't make the same mistakes and things again, because this isn't a perfect ride. There's going to be there's things that go wrong, but that needs to be normalised as well. Like that is something that's going to happen. People shouldn't be afraid to reach out and ask for help and be guided by the people that have perhaps been through it before.
Yeah, I think it's marvellous because your website reads like an encyclopedia. Anything I can imagine I would ever need to know about goats is on there. And even if I didn't find what I was looking for, it raises a lot more questions and I know where to go to get more information. And you're so giving with your time and your expertise. I think it's wonderful and it's wonderful to see.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to go through a few things that, you've said on there just so that, our listeners can get a better feel for what it's like to have goats.
Yep.
So they make the perfect pet. Now, I can vouch for the time I have spent. I'll be honest, people out there, I have been here for a couple of hours and Megan has to go and pick up children from school in a moment and we're down to the last 10 minutes and I thought I'd better start recording. I have had a ball with these beautiful goats. How many have you got on site?
I actually don't know what the number is, but I know every single name. I know who I'm missing but when we start working down to numbers, I actually don't know.
That's fair enough.
It was about 100, I think.
Right. It was a question without notice. I'll let you get away with that. But why do they make the perfect pet?
They are incredibly intelligent.
Right.
They are so intelligent, but once you have formed a connection with these animals, they give you their entire heart. They will give you everything they have.
And we talked about it as we walked around, you actually breed for temperament.
We do. Yeah, it's extremely important. I work alone a lot with the dairy goats in particular. They need to be easy to work with.
Yep.
You're investing a lot of time and you don't want the experience to be a negative one. It's got to be a positive one, and temperament's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you milk the dairy goats on your own?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
so most definitely, it's got to be, something.
And they have to come as they're called. They don't get, I don't go chasing them out in the paddock. It's one at a time. They know their names and they come when they're called.
It's like a dog. You call a dog how fantastic.
Yeah, they're incredibly responsive to food, and you've certainly got to be the alpha of the herd to get the best out of them and the respect. But once you've established that bond, like I said, they'll give you everything they've got.
And what are they like with children?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
They're brilliant with children. You do have to, like a dog, you have to
train.
You have to train them. If you encourage bad behaviours, you're going to have problems as adults.
Yes.
But if you are very strict with their behaviours when they're little and how you interact with them, they make amazing animals, companions for kids.
Wow. And you've got 3 children.
I do.
And they all love the goats,
They
do?
Yeah. I couldn't do it without them.
No.
They are an absolute integral part of our
Don't you love farming for that? You've got a built-in workforce. We love that. We do love that. Okay. At the Small Acreage Field Days, there was a sign there and it listed a number of myths about goats.
Yep.
Now, what are a couple of those myths and why aren't they true?
Oh, the biggest one is they'll eat everything.
Yes.
That is so untrue. You won't find a fussier farm animal.
No way.
You will not find a fussier farm animal. So what won't
they eat?
They actually would prefer, in most circumstances, other than, the meat goats, they tend to avoid grass.
They avoid. Yeah, well, actually, that's interesting because around here you've got a lot of grass.
We've got a lot of grass
and a lot of goats.
A lot of goats. They will eat the grass, but it's got to be long. They really don't.
So do they not like having
grass.
to work for their food? They don't like bending their necks.
They're not an animal that has ever been bred specifically for grazing. They've been an animal that's been allowed to graze. So they browse. They roam and browse. They forage at eye level. So we're forcing them to eat on the ground. Oh. They pick up parasites a lot easier than a lot of other livestock. And if the grass gets sort of below 5 centimetres, the concentration of the parasites in that level is much higher. So that's why the goats will actually prefer to race on a higher level.
You're right, they're quite smart.
Yep, they're very, very smart.
Okay, so as far as the myths go, you know, we hear a lot of people say, I'm going to get a goat to help keep the grass down. That's not what you would suggest.
No, if you're really wanting to keep your grass lawn mowed, stick with your cattle or your sheep, but your goats cannot be beaten for your woody weeds, like your blackberries and things like that. They absolutely love them. They thrive on it.
So what about gorse?
Yes, they will eat gorse, but it is a slow process. So what they tend to do is reduce it back to a small, manageable size so that then you can come in and finish it off.
Okay, so what about if, I know Pods has often talked about a spray graze program, with Salvation Jane as well. I don't know what they're like on Salvation Jane.
We had a small patch of it, and this is really important. If you had a whole paddock of it and you weren't providing additional forage, or food, yes, you can definitely build up toxins in the system. So you've got to be careful. But the small patch that we had within 2 years was completely gone because what the goats were doing was eating the flowers.
Yes, so there's no seed.
There was no seed.
Yeah, they weren't pollinating. Right. Okay. I've just had a thought about roses, gorse, blackberry, and the thorns.
Oh, yeah. So how they actually attack the blackberry is they constantly annihilate the leaf bud. So they starve the plant. They don't actually eat the sticks so much, but they are relentless with taking off the leaves. And that's exactly what they'll do with your roses in your garden if you give them half a chance.
Okay, right. So one of my last conversations with Pods before I came down here, he said to me, do not buy a goat. Now, I don't always do what Pods says, but on this occasion, I had a rose cut completely off in the last storm. I'm a bit precious about the roses at the moment. So I might hold off on the goat enterprise for a little longer. They get all our cuttings. Yeah, right. And about the spray graze, would they, if you sprayed off your gorse or your blackberry, and what we sort of tend to do with Salvation Jane is you spray it off. It kind of makes it sweeter, it concentrated.
Yep.
Would that help them annihilate it, get rid of it, or not?
I'm not 100% sure. I actually, where I've seen it really effective is the use of goat's thirst.
Yes.
To reduce the size of the plant and what you're having to spray. And that's where I've seen a really effective use of goats in areas that are almost impenetrable to spray before they go in.
Okay. And what other myths? Have you got another myth about goats? What about fencing?
Oh, fencing. Yeah, a lot of people think they need specialised fencing. It's not actually the case. All of our fences are 1.2 metres, but you do need it very tight. You need it tight at the bottom and you need it tight at the top. If you have a rail on the top of your fence, that's when you're going to have a problem.
Yes.
Because they can actually use that to launch over. A lot of the problem with jumping goats comes from bottle babies where people have started them off in yards that are too low for them and they learn to jump very young. And then once those behaviours are established, they will continue to test their capabilities, and it is a super hard behaviour to break.
Sure.
Almost impossible to break.
It's reward-based, isn't it? They get a reward when they get to the other side.
Because they get to see you.
Yes.
And that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, we tend to find because our herds are fairly large and they feel safe and they're happy in their groups, they don't tend to apply that kind of... Yeah, they don't look to go. Yeah.
So, and the wire that you would recommend, it's a fairly small aperture, I'd imagine, like a 7/8 or 7/90/30, for example, which is really quite a large square. You know, they could get their leg through it.
So if they can get their head through.
Yeah, and they could. And I took some gorgeous photos today. Yeah.
So we tend to have smaller yards for the kids while they're under 6 months and they can't get through. But then we've replaced most of our fencing, I think, with a 15 by 15 square.
Yes.
And that works really, really well.
Yeah, excellent. And that, I think that's what we sort of, it's sort of like a horse mesh or a dog mesh where it's actually a thicker wire.
That's right.
What's the gauge?
Pig meshing as well works really well.
It's a thicker gauge. Yep. Excellent. Alrighty. If someone's looking to purchase a goat, or do they need to buy them in pairs or whatever, what are some of the things that need to be considered?
Okay, so you need a property identification
A pick number?
Coat,
yes.
Pick number is absolutely critical. Shelter is second on that list.
Why? See, I wouldn't have. I've got this down here on my little list. Things to ask you. Is shedding just a? I see lots of shedding for goats. Is it a need to have, or is it just a nice to have?
I mean, bearing in mind we've got dairy goats and miniatures, so they're a bit more specialised. But even for the boars and stuff, they definitely benefit from shedding.
Why?
Goats don't have any protective coating on their skin. They've got a very sort of thin hair, and when they get wet and cold, they are really susceptible to respiratory infections.
Okay.
On rainy days here, even with the 100-odd goats here, you won't even see one. They are in their sheds, and
Bunkered
quite often
down.
we have to feed them in the sheds over winter.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well I'm learning a lot today, but I've learned that because we get asked to build shelters for donkeys. We have been asked to build shelters for sheep, and we've generally talked people around and say sheep are going to be okay.
Yep.
But I guess goats' hair is quite similar to donkeys, actually, if I think about it. So
even thinner.
Wow.
But they're very they don't cope in wet, cold weather if they can't get out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can lose them overnight.
Oh my gosh. And should they be purchased in pairs, or can you just get one goat?
No, goats definitely.
Oh, Pods, the news isn't good. We're getting 2 goats.
So at least a pair. If you can afford to get 3 or more, that's better. They are a herd animal and they feel safe in numbers. Where you get a lot of those behavioural difficulties, like Grandpa's old goat that he had down the back on a chain, the angry one that you used to stir up as a kid, that was an angry goat because it was on its own, and it was, it was being denied the kind of natural behaviours that are really important to make a goat feel safe. And that is numbers and, the freedom to browse and do things that goats naturally do, because they've got a very, very strong pecking order.
Okay.
There's herd queen, and it goes down from there, and they know their place.
So how do you go introducing a new goat into, say I already own 2 goats, Pods, the news isn't good for you, and I decide to get another goat, how does that go?
I would recommend getting 2 again.
Right.
So that
safety in numbers. That's 4, Pods.
So, because adding, it's kind of like chickens. If you add a new chicken into an existing flock, it is going to get picked on quite significantly. And goats are a bit the same. They're pretty tough characters, actually, when it comes to new ones coming in.
All right. When we were walking around, you mentioned something about not so much selling goats, but if you get a goat in when it's older, like they don't produce milk. What was that about?
Dairy goats in particular, once they get to about 5 or so, and this is just my experience and what I've noticed, and it's the same that goes for the information that I provide. You can, everyone's a bit different, and it's all, nothing's
general
right and wrong.
information,
It's just
folks.
general.
Yeah.
But with the older goats, when they're displaced, they go through quite a serious stress load, which doesn't seem to happen on the younger stock. So with the older girls, once they're 5, if they're shifted, quite often they will never quite reach, peak production again.
Okay.
If they don't acclimatise, super well with the
what
new
age
property.
do goats usually get to? How old?
Anyway, it's a bit like a dog, up to 15.
Okay.
I've seen one that's 19, but that one was spoilt rotten.
Okay, and so optimum milking age?
Up to about 10 years old, maybe 12.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Radio. Okay. Gosh, this is really interesting. And what about entire bucks? Would you recommend Pods gets himself a buck?
Definitely not.
No.
They are, don't get me wrong, they are incredibly affectionate. Just because they're an entire buck doesn't automatically make them aggressive. But they do have some pretty
Okay.
All
right. Unattractive. Let's just go with
qualities.
that. Yeah.
They tend to urinate on themselves.
Oh, great.
To
excellent.
attract the females and things.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. That's what every girl likes, isn't it?
And that's where the behavioural problems, because if they're trying to get to does and things, they can push fences and things like that. So definitely stick with wethers or does for pets.
Okay. And what size, what size property would you recommend as a minimum size property that you would think would need for a couple of goats?
Yeah, quarter of an acre. Quarter of an acre is the sort of minimum that we recommend.
Okay, so you don't need to rotate them as far as if you think about worm burden?
Yes, you can, although if you're on a smaller acreage like that, most of their feed is going to be up off the ground. So they're not going to be grazing heavily because they're obviously going to run out of feed.
So it's sort of
pretty
like a
quickly.
quarantine situation anyway.
Exactly, because the thing with goats is the second that hay, it doesn't matter whether it's prime quality lucerne, if that hits the ground, it's toilet material.
Okay, so what about in terms of healthcare? Do you need to trim their hooves? You don't shear them, obviously, because they've got such short fleeces as it is. But dehorning or debudding?
Yep, so debudding is what we start with, and I'd advocate through, for debudding because our animals are set for family life or for milking.
Yes.
So you're working with them very, very
constantly.
Constantly.
So debudding is actually getting rid of the horns, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the bucks, we tend to do it around 3 or 4 days old, and same as, funnily enough, the Toggenburg, which is a dairy breed. They have a very, very strong horn base. But the miniatures, same, the bucks are still around the 3-day to 5-day mark, but up to 2 weeks for the girls. It is absolutely critical that you get those horns debudded very, very young.
So if you know that your doe, your female goat,
is
due, you want to be ringing someone and letting them know you're going to need to bring them over to get debudded.
Absolutely.
And will you, if you were to sell us some goats, you would offer that and we would bring them down here to get them debudded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone that buys from me, I tend to, if you buy stock from me, you can hold my hand for a year. But after that, you need to stand on your feet and take responsibility for what you've jumped into. I'm still going to be there on the phone and everything, but my time is hugely precious. And if you're going to take on breeding animals, do be prepared for that responsibility later on.
So I can't just buy a debudding thing. I can.
Yep.
And is it easy to learn?
Yes, and I'd be more than happy to show people how to do it.
Excellent. Alrighty. Now, you have an open day coming up.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
When is that?
That's on the 10th of December.
Right.
And it's just, look, it's been a tough winter, so, things aren't perfect, but that's the thing, farming's not. But we're more than happy to open our doors to show people what we've got here, what you're looking at for babies right through to adults, so you know sort of what they're going to end up like, ask questions, and see what we make use of. We don't waste anything here if we can help it.
I found that really interesting because you were saying about cleaning up of
you caught me in the shed when you
that's fine. Farming, it never stops.
No.
But so you were saying that all the matting that they all sit
all the waste materials, all their poo, all their bedding, straw, anything gets a second life in vegetable and flower gardens here.
And along those lines, you said about when you milk your goats, because I did ask you what you do with the milk. Is there a market for it? And what did you tell me you do with your milk?
So all of our milk is actually given back to kids, and we bottle raise
kids,
our
that's baby goats, everybody, not your children.
Goats. So we raise all of ours because they're going to be in those really hands-on environments. And any extra milk goes to raising calves. So at the moment we've got 5 Angus cross calves. And if we've got any more, it goes literally to supply our household. We can make cheese from it, and we can also feed the whey and leftover byproducts to the pigs. No wastage.
Yeah, I love that. That is fantastic. So on the 10th of December, you've got an open day.
Yep.
And that's here on this property.
It is.
You happy to give your address?
Yeah. It's at 150 Nettle Hill Road, Hindmarsh Valley.
Yep. And 15 minutes from Victor Harbour.
Yep.
And where can people go to get more information?
So if you want to go to my website, which is www.briarroseminigoats.com, that's got lots of links and information on it.
Fantastic. And I will put the link in the show notes. And if you're looking for any further information, let's face it, Megan here is a powerhouse of information when it comes to goats. So generous with her time and her information. I've had a ball. I think goats is going to be my next enterprise. For a while there it was going to be alpacas. Maybe I'll do both.
Oh, no, goats. Definitely goats.
Lovely. Thanks so much for your time today, Megan.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. We hope you've enjoyed this month's episode and jotted down a few things for your to-do list. You can leave comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, AdelaideHillsFarmServices.com.au. Just click on the Farmcast tab and look for the December episode. See you later.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.